Hey all, here at OS Reviews. Today we're taking a quick look at a unique timepiece from Tokyo Flash Japan called the Kaizen Watch. For those unfamiliar, Tokyo Flash Japan specializes in quirky watches, such as this liquid metal watch, and over the years they've developed a following of fans behind their unique collectible timepieces. Most of them are digital LED-based watches, but again, in terms of the design, just unlike anything else that you would normally see on the market. So it is important to keep in mind that this isn't really a smartwatch in the conventional sense, which is what we maybe usually look at on this channel, but rather is more of a stripped down basic watch, but always has some design attribute that makes it unique, usually in smaller quantities, and they sell out. They are typically gone forever, which makes them even more collectible. However, some of their more popular designs have been on the market for a number of years now. Final look at some of their other unique watches that you can find currently available. This one is called the Upload watch, which also has a built-in memory stick, allowing you to store files and even music a little bit more discreetly on your wrist. Kind of fun, but more importantly, the trick of this particular design is that the watch face, it looks completely stretched and almost unreadable until you tilt the display on the side, and all of a sudden you can actually make out what the time is. More recent models have included their Line Train LCD watch, which is inspired by the subway lines, and they actually are simulating actual signs of different routes, which is just showing a lot of attention to detail. So perhaps here in the holiday season, again, if you are trying to gift something to someone that seemingly has it all, this might actually be a really cool novelty gadget. Most of their current watches can range between $150 to $200 or so they're not necessarily cheap, but all of these are actually manufactured, designed in Japan. Some of them are a little less practical in terms of how you can read them. In fact, they may even seem alien or unrecognizable to those at first glance until you are able to figure out how to interpret the time, include binary clocks as well as the Nixie tube clocks that they have, in addition to ones which are even transparent on the other side. Here's one that's inspired by the word clocks, where the time can actually be read by the text that is not showing up, and it will tell you right now it's 12:35 p.m. Some of their past designs can be referenced here, such as a pressure gauge watch inspired by PSI meters, also looks really unique, along with ones which are inspired by radar. Here's one that's a radioactive meter, again, just very quirky in terms of how they are built. So this one here, again, the Kaizen, that typically sells for around $200 or so, can sometimes be on sale for a little less during the holiday season. It's one of their more classic designs that's been around for a number of years, but it still stands up in terms of looking very clean and modern. The entire material here is constructed out of a aluminum alloy, and then we have these kind of 3D like bubbles which will display the actual time, which is actually read by adding together all of the columns going from left to right. And you can pick between different variants, such as a black or silver, and also the color of the LEDs can also be customized. Variants which will shine yellow, for instance, versus red, you can all pick between. Although one thing I will say is I do wish maybe they would make one version where you can control the colors of the LEDs. It is using a pretty standard CR2032 battery, which will last roughly a year before you have to swap it out. A quick description: Kaizen combines a raised convex bubble lens with optical technology precisely engineered to diffuse the advanced low-energy Japanese LEDs, creating a bright, magnified lighting effect. And here's a quick look at how to read the time. So we can see in this demo, it's actually 12:58. On the first column, you can see a T, which tells you right now it's showing the time as opposed to the date. And you can then tell 1 is in this first column, 2 is in the second, so it's 12, and then 58 is derived by 2 plus 3, which equals 5, and then 1 plus 3 plus 4 equals 8. So although it may seem cryptic and hard to read at first glance, after you master it and understand the logic, it actually is quite easy to do, and also helps you practice some of those mental arithmetic skills, keeping your mind sharp. We can take a look at date. So in this particular setting, you can see the D has been shun on the first column. So it's telling us that now all the digits represent dates, and it's 10/29. 9 is derived by 3 plus 4 plus 2, so it's telling us that it's October 29th. The variant that we have here is the silver aluminum plus yellow LEDs, but again, you can customize that per your liking. It says change the way you think about time. Inside here, we do get a pretty well presented thank you card, smaller internal box that is also in this decorative red color that's kind of perfect for the holidays, I would have to say. And we have the same kind of accents going on. Right on top here, we do have the instruction manual that tells you how to, again, read the time on the Kaizen watch. So this model can only show in 24-hour format due to the way that the digits here work. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And of course, it only has one clock. You can't really have multiple time zones, for instance. Still is quite simple in that regard. One thing that is very cool, though, is there is also an animation mode, which means if you want to flick this mode on, it will try and flash every time that it hits a new minute for 12 minutes after the crown key was hit. Then inside we have, of course, just the Kaizen watch itself, and that is pretty much it. So fairly well presented wraps that are protecting the unit from any scratches or damage during transit, which we can peel off. And a couple of first impressions would be, number one, by default, it is a pretty large strap, but like most regular watches, the straps can be customized. If you're using a smaller screwdriver, you can remove the links depending on your wrist size to fit both men and women alike. Secondly, the watch is surprisingly lightweight. Again, it's constructed out of aluminum alloy, so it is quite cold to the touch, but it's not one of the more dense metals out there. In terms of water resistance, if we kind of zoom in here, you'll see that it is up to 3 ATMs, which means you are able to get it splashed in the rain if you're working out at the gym, and that should still survive, but it's not recommended to go diving with it. One additional remark is in order to change the time, you do need access to a small pin in order to tap on this tiny key that is flush on the surface of the watch to prevent any accidental hits when you don't need to use it. Although a tool isn't included in the box, you can use a ballpoint pen or any standard paper clip, and that will do the trick. Tap on that key there for a few seconds, and you're able to actually change, again, the digits kind of one at a time. So going from, say, right now, the time, it's going to be showing the hour, and once you are satisfied with the actual hour being displayed, going through all of the different possible animation modes one at a time, again, 1 1, here is 1 2, this is how 1 3 is represented, 1 4, so on and so forth. You can then tap on the key one more time to go select, and it will go into the next mode, which will be minute hand. Press on the button here again, and it will go into date, that you can again use this button to go up by increments of 1 to cycle through and change the date accordingly. Otherwise, I have to say it looks quite sleek and still very futuristic. Has a slight kind of diffused color to the metal, so it's not ultra shiny or anything like that. It kind of hides fingerprints and smudges a little bit more easily. And again, it's really not too thick at all. So here's a quick size comparison with a Amazfit GTR smartwatch, which you can tell is going to be maybe a touch thinner, but honestly, they're all very comparable in terms of the actual weight and feeling on the wrist. Simply unlock it by making it a larger cuff, and then when you are done putting it onto your wrist, you can then clamp everything shut. All the fit and finish here feels very precise, and when you actually turn it on just by flicking on the crown key, that's when everything starts to wake up. Kind of takes a moment to animate, and going from left to right showing you the time. So right now you can see it's now flicked over to date, and it will give you just a few seconds to read that back until it slowly fades away and disappears. The LEDs are fairly bright, so even now we are in studio lighting, you can still make it out without too many issues. Same thing goes if you have a bit of sunlight hitting on it, legibility still seems decent. Although, of course, like any LED watch, it looks best when there is a slightly darker environment. And here's an example of the animation, which is flashes that random sequence very quickly once every minute when you have woken up the watch. Here's a closer look in a slightly darker environment. The LEDs pop even more, very bright. So right now it's 2102. Representing 903. So again, as long as you are proficient at reading it, you get used to it, and the overall process is quite good in terms of going from left to right, and everything again still is very much legible. Date, so right now it's November 2, and then 1 plus 2 plus 3 is 6, so it's going to be the 26th. Now, one thing that you aren't able to do on this watch would be, say, turning off one of the features like the date selection, so it will always go and transition into that mode after it shows the time for a few seconds. Now, it's also quite clever in that if you're tilting it from the edge, it also hides the characters from view. So someone that is looking at it from a dramatic angle isn't necessarily going to be able to read all the digits, as you can see there, but the tube, in terms of how it's convex, also distorts and creates this pretty cool animation as you are looking at the numbers. Again, everything still being quite clear and easy to see for the most part. So that's more or less it as far as our quick hands-on review of the Kaizen watch from Tokyo Flash Japan. Again, in terms of functionality, after you get the hang of how to read it, it still is a pretty simple product at the end of the day, but I have to say that it is very clever in terms of the way it's engineered. More than this, I think their entire catalog and design philosophy of making timepieces that are just unique, quirky, and set you apart from the crowd is worthy of attention. It blends something geeky, but also pretty elegant and stylish at the same time. You can find out more details in the links down below. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews.